Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Mike Waltz completely dismantles Margaret Brennan on her own show on Face the Nation when it comes to President Trump deporting illegal immigrants. Let's dive in.
Last Saturday, 238 Venezuelan men were handed over to the government of El Salvador. 137 of them were deported using this rarely used 1789 Alien Enemies Act. This is important because it gives the power to detain and deport without a court hearing first, if they come from countries at war with the U.S. In the hearing on Friday, it was revealed that El Salvador, where they're being held, rejected two of the people. One, on the basis of gender, because it was a woman and they can't be held at a maximum security prison. The other, because the person wasn't even Venezuelan at all. How does that kind of high consequence mistake happen?
Well, these kind of one-offs we'll deal with on an individual basis. But, Margaret, the underlying issue here is twofold.
So there was a mistake that you acknowledge
I can't speak to those individual cases and the details of the individual cases. But what I can speak to is President Trump has determined that this group is acting as a terrorist organization. It is terrorizing our communities through attacks, torture, rape, and the most awful of situations for those communities, number one. And number two, the Alien and Sedition Act fully applies because we have also determined that this group is acting as a proxy of the Maduro regime. So
I'm sorry, just to clarify on that. This is supposed to apply if the U.S. is at war with a country. You are saying you have evidence that the government of Venezuela is directing these gangs?
We are saying that TDA is acting as a proxy of the Maduro regime. This is how the Alien and Sedition Act applies. And we cannot have district judges interfering with the commander-in-chief's actions to take care of, in the way he deems necessary, a terrorist organization.
So the U.S. is at war
and I
with
got to tell you,
Venezuela?
we can debate on Article 2, Article 3. That's a fair debate. However, in this case, the commander-in-chief, President Trump, is taking decisive action to rid our communities of these gangs that are operating in a paramilitary fashion, and that we know Maduro is deliberately emptying his prisons in a proxy manner to influence and attack the United States.
But that's so different.
That's how
the U.S. is not at war with the country of Venezuela. I know the Attorney General said on another network she thinks this is going to go to the Supreme Court.
Sure, that's
you
fine.
Want to have this
but
fight.
Margaret, we have instances where the IRGC from Iran have operated to buy with and through Mexican cartels to then bomb facilities here in the United States. We've taken decisive action in that regard. We're going to take decisive action in this regard. And we're making a Washington, D.C. distinction when the American people are tired of being terrorized by these gangs.
No one is defending gangs, but
it sounds like it. It certainly sounds like it from the Democrats on the other side. And it sounds like in the case of this judge that wanted to turn a flight around full of gang members that had intelligence packets that had determined what they're doing.
There was a woman sent to a man's prison, and El Salvador said no.
I mean,
so it's the question of if you are suspending the ability to have a day in court, that you get the list right. That you can verify that these people are gang members.
Look, every one of them were here illegally. So first of all, we had every right and should deport every one of these individuals. If you want to make a special case for one, that's fine. But underlying that is the Alien Act that has determined the commander-in-chief has the absolute authority to do this.
Oh, I don't really care, Margaret. Okay, that's the sad reality of this situation. I don't really care about her nitpicking here, okay? Let me know if you care about her nitpicking down below, because the reality is she is talking about two people out of a flight of 237, over 100 of which belonged to Tren de Aragua gang, a gang that has been operating in the United States under indirect orders from Maduro, who is, by definition, a dictator in South America. And again, by the way, Venezuela should be one of the crown jewels of South America, okay? It should be. It's got a ton of oil. It's got a great growing season. The soil is fertile, beautiful mountains. What's the problem, Venezuela? Oh, I don't know. You tried so socialism, and now you're in a dictatorship. Congratulations, you played yourself. And then they got so angry at the United States that they emptied their prisons and sent hundreds of thousands of people into the United States, abusing humanitarian aid and then getting into Democrat cities to which they were given free room and board. And then when they committed violent crimes, they were basically given a get out of jail free card and moved to another city. This is how the Laken Riley incident happened. And by the way, Laken Riley was at the University of Georgia, and I will never stop harping on this until things change. Athens, Georgia is a part of Athens-Clarke County. In it is the wonderful University of Georgia. And in that third world country, the University of Georgia is essentially the all-inclusive resort. Well, that resort got abused, and then Laken Riley paid the price, all because Democrats refused to deal with the illegal migrant situation in their own communities and basically sent them elsewhere across the nation. And then somehow the Democrats of Athens-Clarke County then declared themselves a sanctuary city, and now they have this mess to deal with. Good grief. And then you have Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation, one of the best journalistic attempts to get people to come up there and really defend their ideas and defend the policies before the American public. And she's asking these ridiculous questions after millions upon millions of people poured across the southern border during the Biden administration, all while Alejandro Mayorkas, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, refused to do anything because he knew if he bothered to actually deal with the migrant crisis, he'd get canned in an instant. We like to think of Joe Biden as this doddering old fool that just wants to lick his ice cream cone and deal with most of his grandkids, not the one that Hunter illegitimately had. But the reality is, under his administration, millions upon millions of people flooded across our border under terrible pretenses and arguably even under terroristic pretenses. And Mike Waltz particularly talks about this in this interview. And to quote him exactly, Margaret, we have instances from the IRGC, from Iran, have operated with and through Mexican cartels to then bomb facilities here in the United States, Waltz said. We've taken decisive action in that regard. We're going to take decisive action in this regard, and we're making a Washington, D.C. distinction. In other words, the new regime in D.C., thanks to President Trump, is actually looking at this issue and declaring it, by definition, a major concern of the United States. That we've had millions of people unvetted, unprocessed, come through the border in the south. And by the way, we've also had starting to have more issues on the Canadian border. Thankfully, we've started to partner with them as well. And when I say partner, I mean we got Trudeau to actually do his job. Mexico, I can't say quite as much, although they're trying their best. That's like the little fourth grader trying their best at their, macaroni art. You pat them on the head, say thank you, but you also know at the end of the day, the adults are in the room. You've got to deal with this problem a little bit more drastically. And so Margaret Brennan is out there clutching her pearls at two of the deported migrants that were deported underneath a legal, constitutionally backed law that has not been dismantled by Congress. By definition, of the Alien and Sedition Acts, there were 4 of them. 2 were basically sundowned and basically said to go bye-bye. 1 was directly repealed by the Jefferson administration, and I actually agree with that decision, even though that was, over 200 years ago. And who goes on 200-year-old logic? Good grief. And there's a reason that the Alien Enemies Act is still on the books, and it is not just during wartime. It is for the president to deport whoever is aiding and abetting American enemies, particularly those that aren't American citizens themselves. This is one of the smartest laws ever passed by Congress. It was so smart that when the other laws were repealed, they kept this one in particular because they knew deep down, our founders and the sons of the founders knew that this law was so airtight that it needed to be used time and time again. It was used in the War of 1812, it was used in both world wars, and now it's being used in peacetime because it's being used to the letter of the law. I do not understand what Margaret is talking about here. Okay? This is pearl clutching at the highest order of a whole bunch of rich white Democrats who live in their gated communities, and the only times they ever have to deal with minorities is when they're getting barbecue or when they're getting their lawns trimmed because their kids refuse to do it. Okay? That's the reality of this situation here. And so Margaret Brennan is trying to cater to all these rich white Democrats who don't understand what it's like for the regular old American Joe out there, and they don't understand how bad Biden did and Biden mismanaged the southern border. This is just insane. So Waltz is doing a fantastic job here. Thank you for trying to speak truth to power, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed this segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.